Right, David. So thanks for coming over. First, I have to check the pronunciation. David Kolbusz.
As you like.
As I like. What about with the long z at the end?
Well, I mean, I think when you have a name as strange as mine, the last one, you kind of drop the opposition pretty early
good.
on.
I think it's useful having a distinctive name. It's good if you've got a Z in your name.
Sure.
It separates you from the crowd.
Some people get really worked up about their names, even if it's like, I'm trying to think of a name off the top of my head, but people get hung up on pronunciation, and I think it's just...
You relax with it.
Well, it's just a bit wasted time, isn't it?
Canadian. It's a Canadian thing, possibly.
It's probably the Canadian thing.
Yeah. So, you're the second Canadian I've interviewed.
Who was the first? Mark Hunter?
Steve Renakis.
Oh, Steve Renakis, okay.
In fact, after that, my knowledge of Canadian creatives runs dry. Is there any others, you know? There must
Mark
be
Hunter.
others.
I think it's Mark Hunter, Steve
Okay.
Renakis, and I.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
No one else.
Okay.
There's no advertising industry in Canada.
So,
we all came over here.
where did you grow up? Which part of Canada?
Oh, you got to because
Obviously giving it away.
It's Canada. We've just been over that. No, I was Ottawa, the nation's capital.
Ottawa. Okay.
Yes. Government town.
Is it? In what sense?
Well, the government. Is
In the
there.
sense that it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
Washington.
Yeah.
I know
exactly.
what the government is, but
No,
you
exactly. Yes. You're familiar with the concept of governance, and
but in the sense that
yeah.
like Washington is where the government is.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool. Okay.
The home of not just municipal politics, but
Oh, exciting.
federal as well.
And were your
And provincial. Well,
family
Ontario.
government related or not?
My mother was. My mother worked for the government of Canada. She was in human resources,
Okay.
and my father was a teacher. So I suppose you could consider that municipal government. So, but not well. He was a teacher, then a headmaster, I suppose.
Right.
So I actually never knew him as a teacher.
And what were you like as a kid growing up? Were you quite an arty kid?
Yeah, I think you could probably say that. I think it was. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I think I had a healthy appetite for the arts, as I kind of always have. I think I've always enjoyed, artistic endeavors.
In what sense? Drawing, reading, everything? Any particular?
Yeah. Reading was a big thing for me. When I was in. Do you have kindergarten here? I can't remember. Okay.
Yeah, we know the concept.
Yeah, you're familiar with the concept of kindergarten. I won an Avid Reader Award.
Cool.
That
Was
was
your first award?
The first ever award. Yeah, it was an Avid
Still got
Reader
it?
Award. No. I don't even know if there was a physical object. I feel like there was probably a ribbon.
Certificate, maybe.
Maybe. Something like that. But I won that. I like to read a lot, and I did draw. Not particularly good at it, which is probably why I ended up writing more than I did art directing.
So do you remember as a kid ever seeing an ad or bit of communication or design or anything that had an effect on you?
Yeah.
Or what was the first thing that
Well, I mean,
cut through?
I think from a very early age, I kind of always knew that I was being sold to, but I was always complicit. I was always eager to be sold to.
Right.
So I remember these are not quality advertisements, but all the toys that are being sold in the games, and there was a school of advertising to children in probably the late 70s, the 80s, that was very much focused on it's kind of funny. I was looking at some of these the other day for some ads that we were for a campaign that that's breaking soon. Just the vernacular is used in that era for children's advertising was pretty amusing, because it was always very instructional but set to song.
Right.
So it was always these amazing songs to kind of dazzle children with, but it was very instructive. Here's how you play the game. You load the dice, you do the thing, and you
Pop-O-Matic,
yeah. It's like there was Hungry Hippos, there was like Pop-O-Matics, the Pogos ball and whatever. So I mean, all those that entire whole and the slice of life advertising as well too was big for me. I always enjoyed the jingles and Coke anthems and Pepsi. So Spuds MacKenzie and all that American advertising that bled up from.
MacKenzie. I've got a feeling that Steve Renakis mentioned Spuds MacKenzie.
Really?
I think so.
It's
It
a
rings a
Canadian
bell.
thing,
I can't
guess.
imagine why else I would know that name. But and was the Canadian did American ads leak over to Canada?
Yeah.
Or okay,
Yeah,
so
very much.
it would be the similar things in
Yeah.
the States.
Well, it was an interesting. I mean, because of the way Canada was, you had a lot of influence coming. It was part of the Commonwealth, so you had a lot of stuff coming over from the UK, but then also a lot of stuff bleeding up from the US as well too. So and
what
my
would come
mom's
over
English
from-
as well too.
Okay.
So there was a lot of
So
that.
what would you be taking in from the UK? Presumably not ads, but TV shows, Monty
Yeah.
Python, things like that, I guess.
Coronation Street was a
you'd have Coronation Street,
huge
yeah.
staple in our home. Yeah,
Wow.
but we had the Coronation Street omnibus,
Right.
which was we were always 6 months behind, and my mom would watch it at the end of the week on a Sunday, and she'd just sit down and just blaze through the entire week's
Exciting.
episodes. Yeah, but yeah, no, the theme song loomed large in my childhood, and
So did you have a do you ever have a job as a kid? Newspaper around, anything?
yeah, of course, yeah. No,
What did you do?
I delivered the Penny Saver, which was classifieds.
Yeah.
As a newspaper full of classified ads. That was my start, and then eventually a paper route, as it was called, or route in Canada, and then later a grocery store, and then a video store, and then a music store, and then a bookstore, and then
Video store. Should we explain to the younger people what video stores are?
it's such an amazing phenomenon. This whole thing, the fact that nostalgia doesn't even really exist anymore. There's no history. There's no the game that I play with younger creatives now is, do you know this reference? I'm like, oh, and it started with me dropping references to things. It's like, oh, it's that thing where
Yeah.
you blah 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 blah, and they're like, what is that thing? We have no idea what that thing is, and it's amazing how little this current young generation knows about the past.
It's a weird thing, that, because as a bit of a sort of geek who's always collected stuff and tried to find out about stuff, it used to be fantastically hard to find out about things.
But I think it
It's
makes complete
now-
sense. I think it makes complete sense.
In what sense?
Well, because you're surrounded by stuff now.
So you don't need to look for anything.
You can't possibly venture into the past because there's too much in the present to consume.
Yeah.
There's like you're surrounded. There's so much going on that it just there's no possible way that
There's
you
no
can.
route map, I guess,
There's no
is there?
route
Where's
map. I mean, you
I thought it was
could if you really tried. If you really got into something, fine. But I mean,
I suppose my analogy was, it's like there's not many people in London who've been inside St Paul's, because you think it's there. I can go there anytime.
yeah,
But
that's a good
but
analogy.
I still think it's odd that, particularly if you're a creative, that you don't explore all the creativity that's gone before. If you're in if you go to college and you study, you want to be a dressmaker, or you want to be in that area, they study the whole history of it.
Of course,
And it's, they can navigate their way around. Whereas I think in our business, people don't tend to do that.
it's bananas. But I think it's also because our business is informed by so many different types of creativity, and it almost becomes unwieldy, the prospect of
Yeah.
trying to work back and kind of find out the influences for everything that you're influenced by today.
Yeah.
That was a terrible sentence, but you get what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I
It's
get
like
what you're saying.
you're informed by the creative product around you in the present, but to work back and find out what influenced all the practitioners of art in the present, it seems crazy, especially if you're dealing with dance, music, film, television, literature. It's like the entire. That's all of those
everything,
arrows in our
everything.
quiver
And
that we use
sociology,
to
yeah.
inform what we do. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to be able to go back and figure out everything, but yeah, I think it's important to try.
So, I'm going to try and pronounce. Is it Carleton College?
Carleton University.
Carleton
Wow,
University.
you did do some research.
I did do my
Jesus.
research. I'd like to
Gosh.
cover myself. So, studying political science,
Mhm.
English, film, then journalism.
That's right.
So, what was the plan?
There was no plan. The plan was to not die alone in the gutter,
Okay.
penniless. My dad, from a very early age, instilled in me a fear of poverty, and so I never went the starving artist route. I kind of went into university because it was what was done. Pick a couple of subjects that kind of made sense at the time, and just kind of flitted about from thing to thing.
In
whatever.
retrospect, it looks like a good. To me now, it looks like a good plan. English, film, journalism, and political science
Yeah.
seems like a good basis to start figuring out communication than going on an ad course.
Absolutely. Maybe
But obviously, it wasn't deliberate.
No,
plan.
maybe that was the accidental blueprint. But in fact, you saying it now, I didn't even realize. Yeah, okay, maybe that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And then, so what made you think, actually, I want to concentrate more on ads? Art.
Well, no, I wanted to probably write and direct films. I think is where I wanted to end up. After I started my first kind of foray into the professional world was journalism.
Right.
And I was a freelance journalist for a bit, and I was terrible at it, and moved into.
What was the issue with that then? Why were you terrible?
I don't like making people uncomfortable, and to be like a good journalist, a good reporter, you have to kind of dig for the story and ask people questions that they don't want to answer. And I was kind of always like.
So what got the journalism thing going? Watching All the President's Men or Lou Grant? Lou Grant, I used to love.
Oh my God!
Do you remember Lou Grant?
Yeah, well, I mean, All the President's Men was definitely a motivating factor.
Yeah.
There was, yeah, I feel bad because you're sussing me out. I feel like I'm an open book here. It's like, yes, it was All the President's Men, as a matter of fact. I thought that was exciting. I thought, no, and I had a healthy interest in political history as well, too. And so, to me, politics, especially American politics, Canadian politics to a degree as well, too. I always felt it fascinating, the inherent drama. Now I'm kind of regretting that fascination because there's almost too much drama currently. But
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, at least you've got the coolest leader probably on the world stage now.
We do apparently.
Yeah.
He seems like a good guy, right?
Macron are sort of very cool.
Yeah.
And decent human beings, which is
No, so it was journalism first, bad at that. Moved into arts journalism and op-ed writing and whatnot, and there's just no money in that, and so it was in my head. I was kind of thinking, what are the other things that you want to do? You love film, maybe write film and direct film. How do you do that? Gosh, I don't know. There was no one to help me along that journey as well too. I was in Toronto, and I think that people were like, oh, you have to start running. The concept of running, and but I want to make movies. Why would I get people coffees? My brain didn't put together the whole. Yeah. This is a step, and you have to pay your dues, and blah blah blah. So I was like, okay, no, but if I want to do that thing where I film things and write things, I should just probably do that. And advertising seemed like the most immediate point of entry to doing that.
So you went to Humber College?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what was that, like a sort of Miami ad school, Watford type place?
Yeah, it was like a 1-year blitzkrieg. It was just here's everything. These are the ropes, kid, type of thing.
And I'm trying to think what year that would be. That would be. I'm only trying to think in terms of what they would have taught you at the time and how much it was to change later. Was it, were they teaching you presumably very much magic marker style, typing up your own script? What would they be teaching you at that point?
Oh, you're asking me to go back and try and there was typing.
Yeah.
No, it was copywriting, the thing that I was doing. So there was Humber had separate programs for art direction and copywriting, and I was definitely
in the copywriting course.
In the copywriting course, and we would pair with students from the art direction course, and we would kind of help each other out towards the end of the year. But in the initial stages, it was definitely all about coming up with creative concepts, learning the right way to sell a product or service using entertainment as a way in.
Okay.
Surprise, engage, and reward. As the 3 tenets of.
Was that what it was on the course? Surprise, engage.
Surprise, engage, and reward.
Reel them off like that.
Yeah. Well, it's muscle memory, right?
Surprise, engage, and reward. I mean, still as relevant as it was.
Of course it is.
Obviously,
it's like
yeah,
that's what we still try and do to this very day.
Probably more relevant now.
Yeah. But there was that, yeah. So, and I mean, yeah, it was no much more no more complicated than that. And then at the end of the course, because it was one of the best received course, it was acknowledged as being for copywriting. It was acknowledged as being the good one. Internships were quick to follow if you showed a degree of potential.
So did you think, my God, this is what I want to do? Or did you think, well, this will do for the moment? Or were you, this is it?
Well, I mean, I try not to kind of do this will do for the moment kind of thing, because then you just kind of, you've got an eye on something else. So I was apply myself as much as I possibly can to anything that I'm doing. So it was like, let's go for this. This is exciting. Let's do this. I've always been like that, though, with even the stupidest jobs. I worked at an
Yeah.
ice cream shop, and I was like, I'm going to be the best ice cream scooper
Yeah.
I can possibly be.
Where does that come from then? Without getting too psychological and deep, but some people are like that.
Yeah, I
Right.
think if you don't, I don't know. I think you just have to get excited about whatever it is you're doing. Otherwise, why bother doing it? It gets really depressing otherwise. Like, really depressing.
Because I try to instill that in my kids, but it's hard to
Right.
instill that.
I guess
To get
so.
people to care about, as you say, if you've got serve ice cream, make it amazing. Make it
Yeah.
as good as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because why?
I don't know where it comes from, and I mean it's probably to a degree. I suppose I sort of, I mean I regret having that in me because I think I've probably done this for far longer than I should. I should probably go off and be a little bit more ambitious and try and write that book or that film or that whatever. But I still care too much about what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I can't shake that.
Yeah.
And it's probably to my own detriment because I probably should write a movie or something like that. I am at the minute, but you know.
So
I
what
love what I
happened?
do.
So you leave college and get an internship, yeah? JWT?
No, it was. Oh, that's. I mean, this is where your research fails you. Someone fucked that up in an article once. Something that you've read. It was TBWA. Was my first
okay.
agency. I was a pirate.
You're a pirate?
Well, you know,
In what sense?
no, it's in the sense that
Oh.
TBWA they've got the disruption and the
Oh, okay.
pirate.
Yeah.
It's,
Have they got a pirate flag?
yeah.
Was that the year of? Is that pre-disruption or was that disruption?
No, that was
Is
in
that
the,
all
in,
over
it
the
was in the
wars?
thick of disruption. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
It's just like standing out, isn't it? Disruption.
Yeah, it's just
'Cause
doing the opposite of the thing for the sake of it.
Eruption.
Uh,
The opposite of eruption.
yeah.
And what was that like? What was TBD? Was that as good as you'd imagined it to be? When
Yeah,
you
no,
were-
it was great. It was a close circle of creative types, and it felt like real life, and it was we actually one of the interesting things is upon getting a job there. It's interesting only to me. It's not to anyone else, but the agency lost a big account, and as a consequence, they had to do a bit of laying off, and because me and my partner were affordable options, we got to stay on, and
Yeah.
because I mean we were inconsequential to the bottom line, but you could put us against lots of briefs, so we got many opportunities that we probably shouldn't have at that stage in our career. I think things have changed now. I think young creatives get all the opportunities they want. But back then it was like you should be doing radio ads and print ads, or it was kind of the thing when you started out. That's you have to earn your stripes and do that. So we got.
So it worked out well then.
Yeah,
The fact that they lost an account
Yeah.
worked out to your advantage. You got a lot more opportunities.
Got to do television very early on. Still did a little bit in the trenches with radio, and that was hugely beneficial as well.
Did you do anything that got you noticed, or anything that you thought that's good? You know, is there anything that you thought I can do this
From that first,
from that first thing at TBWA?
I mean, yeah, I mean I was there for a year and a half, but I think it was the last campaign that I did there. I mean, awards should be no mark of
Sure.
anyone's worth or value within the industry, but it got a campaign that I did, the last campaign I did at TBW, I got Bronze Lions, so that was good to get that kind of recognition that early on. It was for AGF Mutual Funds. They sponsored a film festival, and we did a series of ads for that. That was good. But yeah, there was a whole bunch of nonsense before then, which was just kind of like.
So that was the first thing you thought. This could be a career. I could be good at this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think from the very beginning it was kind of like, okay, well, we just have to. I heard someone once said when I was coming up, it was like you have to have one good thing a year to stay relevant within the industry.
Yeah.
You just need one hit a year, and I've kind of always kept that in the back of my head.
12 months to do it.
Yeah. And of course tried the best at whenever possible.
So who would have been influencing you in that early stage? I don't know how much you would be taking in from around the world, like America.
It was like the two, my first love in advertising was Kessel's Kramer.
Right.
and got to Mother, my second love, through Kessel's Kramer. So huge fascination, and just absolutely adored everything that those guys did in Amsterdam. That was the first kind of like, oh, they're on my same wavelength, and then fell quickly in love with Mother. My mother. This gets confusing at this. I'm trying to.
Yeah,
she was living in London at the time, and so I would come over and visit her, and managed to arrange an interview with Yanni and Luke.
So that's what you did. So did you quit your job and then move to this country, or doing it bit by bit?
It's funny when you go back and you think about how you the stupid things that you did as a kid. Yanni and Luke really liked my book, and they said, "Yeah, we'll keep you in mind for anything that happens to come up." And then a few months later, they were like, "Oh, we have an art director who's down a partner. We just need someone for a couple months." I moved my entire life from Canada to the UK. It wasn't even a job; it was an interview.
For an interview.
So I had to meet.
So was that confidence or stupidity, or what was that?
I don't know. I don't remember. I can't even connect with the person that I was back then to kind of go. Seriously, I just.
So what did you quit your job?
I quit my job.
Quit your job to go for an interview.
And moved to London. My mom was there, so I knew I had a place. I was like, okay, I'm going to nail this interview. Jan and Luke and I got along well in that meeting. I was like, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to. They like my work, and Robert sent me an email, and that was very exciting. To me at the time.
And you were aware of lots of Mother's work at the time?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. A lot of it.
Where would you have seen it? I'm just trying to think. That's what year is that? That's 2000 and
probably 2000.
3, 4.
Oh, maybe 2001,
What?
2, 1, 2, maybe.
Yeah, maybe slightly later. Just trying to think whether you could instantly look up their site at the time and see all their stuff, or online on YouTube, or how would you have been aware through the awards books?
So, but then there were publications. There was communication arts. There was, I'm trying to think. There was the awards books. There was communication arts. There was probably, I think there was an article about Mother in Graphis magazine, which had a nice photo spread of all of them, and kind of they were bloodied, and it was like posed, and they were like broken arms and stuff like that. It was one of their conceptual PR photos that they were famous for back in the day. And Campaign magazine. You sometimes get Campaign magazine. And I'm racking my brain, but yeah, it was just like little bits. When you were tuned into the industry, then you were tuned into the industry.
But I guess you must have thought, well, London's one of the best places in the world to go. If it's not there, I'll go somewhere else. Did you interview anywhere else? Did you see?
No, just there.
Kessel's Kramer wasn't here at the time, was it? Or
no, it was just that was strictly Amsterdam. Yeah. No, it was just Mother. I just came for Mother basically, and
how did that go? Is that the Mother that was in
St. John's? Yeah.
With the caravan.
Yeah, with the caravan, the famous caravan.
Yeah. And how was that? How was that? How was Mother compared to TVWA back home?
Well, it was just far more chaotic.
Was it?
Yeah, because Mother, as a rule, just kind of is and was. But it was great. It was that building, that big room that everyone was in, the long table that everyone talked about. It was terrific. It was. You felt like part of a real community of individuals driven to make great work, and that was kind of like work above all else. And certainly there were ambitions to grow, as with any agency, but the work always came first, and that was really exciting. And there was, I think, over the years, you built up an addiction to the fact that there was always another amazing project on the horizon.
Mm.
That's why I stayed for as long as I did. Probably the longest I've been in any job. I think I was there for close to 5 years. And yeah, it was just because there was always another great thing around the corner.
So what did they do different from where you were? What did you pick up that was different?
Well, I mean, I liked the fact that, and this is not me ragging on account people, but I liked the fact that there were no account people. And I like the fact that responsibility, there were account people, there were no people with the title of account person. Yeah. That responsibility was apportioned out between producers and strategists and creatives. And that flexed the account person muscle, within oneself.
Within you. So you all of a sudden you had to start presenting more to clients.
Yeah.
Did you ever do that when you were in Canada?
I mean, there was a little bit of that, and but not to the degree that there was. You wouldn't have conversations and arguments and back and forth with clients like you did at Mother, and that was really beneficial. And because it was such a close-knit community, I think we all kind of really worked and with each other in collaboration and picked up the slack. When it's like, so you start to learn a bit of strategy and learn a bit of production and learn a bit of account skills, and it made you a more well-rounded creative individual. I think that was my experience there.
Yeah, I think probably as well at that time, it's possibly the best time to be at Mother, I would say.
I mean, some would argue just slightly before when I arrived.
Oh, really?
Because when I arrived, we just won Orange, and a lot of people thought that. So there was the first iteration of Mother was all the kind of the smaller punk accounts, them doing really interesting work that was kind of. I think the work before I arrived was more dangerous.
Yeah. And
I think there's a lot of people who think of that as being not the best version of Mother, but the most interesting. That's kind of how it kind of came to be. That was it was the stuff that was just like, I can't believe they let people put that out into the world. The Super Noodles, the initial Super Noodles work, the old Harvey Nichols work with the knit rabbits,
that's good. Hippie and Harvey, is it?
Yeah, exactly. The art you can the art you can own. I don't remember what that client was exactly, but it was just a lot of stuff that felt quite punk and irreverent and different. And why would anyone pay for an agency to do that? Because it's so dangerous. It felt dangerous. And then when Orange came around, which is when I joined it, the agency grew up a little bit and was probably a little bit more responsible. I mean, still dangerous, but there was definitely Boots was soon to follow as well too. Which it was a great period. But yeah.
And who oversaw you? Was that very much Robert and Mark, or more one than the other, or how did you operate in those days?
Back in those days, I mean, there was Robert and Mark, but there was also senior creative teams who would lead projects. Worked with Ben Mooj a lot, Caroline and Kim, Yan and Luke, all the early stars. And then on certain projects, me and my various partners would be put on things. I worked with Paul Cohen initially, and then later Sam Walker. And you'd run things as well too. Bob and Mark were really good about kind of giving responsibility to younger creatives trying to work their way up.
I thought I was there for a bit, Mother, and I thought Mark was one of the most talented people I've come across in the business.
Yeah, he's
sort
great.
of naturally, effortlessly, and I sort of knew Robert a little bit, but I didn't really know Mark. I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, they're both really good.
Robert's smart.
Yeah. At very different things, but.
So you did a ton of Orange stuff.
I did a ton of Orange stuff. Yeah.
How did that come about? Were you? Why did you do so much Orange stuff?
It started as I guess they were the biggest paying client there, and at the time, and so it was easy to bill our time against them. I guess I did other stuff there, but Orange was definitely the bulk of it. And then eventually you start to know the client a little bit more, and so you kind of become part of a team of individuals who service that client. And there was good client relationships there at the time.
So the first ad I remember of yours was an unusual ad that Dougal shot for Orange. That was very odd and unusual, and not like an ad at the time.
Right. And it suffered because of that. I think in
terms of awards.
Yeah.
I think it did, because it was I think people like familiar shapes. They like to go, I can see that, the usual one is this happens and then there's a twist at the end. It was a sort of like it was a slightly new, unusual form.
Yeah.
And I think there was a few of those ads from that period that on Orange that people didn't know what to make of. But was that a deliberate thing? Let's try and do things differently, or was that just something that you did that you kind of felt?
It was definitely something that I felt. I feel like I've told this story before, so I apologize to anyone listening who may have heard this before. It was, but I'd just been divorced, or I think I was going through a divorce at the time, and it was particularly painful, because when you're with someone for a while, I think I was with my wife for 6 years or something like that, which is not a long time, relatively.
No.
But when you're that young, it feels like a disproportionate amount of. So that was painful, and you're just kind of reckoning with that and trying to. It was I think the brief was, I can't remember exactly what the brief was, but it was about the longer you stay with Orange, the better it gets.
Yeah.
I think was the brief, and I think the line that came out of it was relationships that get better with time, and that was manifest in this dance ad. And I'd been to see there was a physical theater company, is still thriving, brilliant, Complicité, and they had a show called A Minute Too Late, and it was just all physical theater. But what I loved about it was there was that show in particular was, even though there was a lot of dance involved and a lot of physical theater, it was still a profoundly sad show. And the thing that struck me about that was really interesting is you can create something beautiful out of something very, very sad. Although the ad itself wasn't particularly sad, it does tug at your heartstrings because it's
emotional. And I suppose it's tricky not to make too many generalizations, but I think when I think of it now, obviously once John Lewis came along, everybody seemed to jump into it. Let's use emotion. Yeah. But particularly in England, people didn't use emotion. That was the sort of thing that Americans did or other people did, but it wasn't a very English thing to show your emotions. Yeah. So that seemed like I'm trying to think when that was. That must have been 2004? 06, was
05, it was either 05 or 06, I can't remember which.
But it was quite, certainly in this country, quite early to use that emotion on something that was considered good.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah.
I think. I mean, obviously, you think of what John Lewis has done since with emotion, and everybody seems to have jumped on that. But that was very unusual at the time for that reason, for being tugging on the heartstrings to some degree.
Yeah, I guess, and I suppose that's maybe why it worked, because it was never designed to tug at the heartstrings. It was very. We approached it very mathematically. I mean, I think it was this dance that was designed to show how two people could become knotted up within each other, and it was I've always called it it's a love letter to the possibility of enduring love, and I think that's what it did at the time. It was even though my thing had fallen apart, it was kind of like, but there is still hope. So that was the purpose of that, but it was never designed to tug at the heartstrings.
I suppose I don't. It sounds like a crass phrase, tug at the heartstrings, like a deliberately cynical. But I don't mean like that. Just that it did for me. I found it kind of an emotional thing that stuck out because it was very unusual. It wasn't the way people were doing ads.
Yeah, Dougal found that track too, and it completely transformed it too. Well, found it. I mean, it's Brian Eno's, but he was to apply it to that film. Seemed strange to do, but worked.
And then I made a list of the people you worked with after that. Rob Lowe, Macaulay Culkin, Val Kilmer, Mina Suvari, Angelica Houston, Snoop Dogg, Dennis Hopper, Michael Madsen. It's unbelievable.
It's good, right?
How on earth did they manage to sign off how did they make that work? I can't think of. I mean, you just don't see that kind of cast.
It's bananas,
for a campaign
right?
now. I don't know how that was done, particularly then.
I still don't understand exactly what do you know what Favored Nations is?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't. But they always, I was like, how are we getting these people? And they'd always say Favored Nations. And I never asked because I wasn't that interested at the time. But I was like, okay, fine. That's.
Isn't that things that it's not in there because it's not in America? It's seen as a smaller thing, and Isn't it something to do
Is
with
that what it
I
is?
think it's
Okay,
something
great.
like that.
So that's how
I
we
think
did
it's
it.
something to do
That's
with
how
that.
we did it.
You know,
So-
like in
But this was
Lost in Translation,
Yeah.
he does the ads in Japan because who gives
Right,
a shit
of
about
course.
Japan. I think it's something like that.
So this was.
I could be wrong.
No, but that sounds right, and it would make sense because it was now with the internet.
Yeah, there are no
Yeah,
favored nations.
yeah. But I guess at the time it was like no one will see it over there, so that makes perfect sense. So, no, Jan and Luke started that campaign, the Gold Spots campaign, and I think the match strike was I think they probably told this story, but Alan Cumming was the first one they got. He kept. Alan Cumming they were on a shoot in LA, and he kept bumming cigarettes from them at a bar. I think they were staying at the same hotel, and they built up a relationship, a friendship, and when it was on another job, and when it came time to start shooting these things, they kind of approached Alan Cumming and was like, hey, remember we gave you all those cigarettes, blah, 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 would you be in this ad? And because he agreed to do it, every other celebrity fell into line, and it was just this glorious sort of, because Alan Cumming
God, I love that.
said yes, another person said yes, and then another person said yes because those two people had said yes, and then it became a thing. And every year,
get up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, whoever is the top.
Yeah. So Jan and Luke left eventually, and Sam and I took over that campaign. With Eric the first year, Eric Enberg, also another talented creative living in Texas now. Yeah.
And what were they like? Was any of them hideous? Was any of them amazing? Dennis Hopper must have been interesting.
The tragedy there is that Dennis Hopper is the worst spot of the ones that we did, but he's also probably the actor that I would have
Most
wanted.
interesting person.
We had a better script too, and a client of ours who knows who she is. At the last minute, she killed the script, and she was like, "No, we're gonna go with the old script." And I was like, "But this is a better script. This is a better script." And yeah, in the end, we made that. That's the one gold spot that I don't love. It's the Dennis Hopper one.
It's funny, the Snoop Dogg. They used him. I don't know if I can say this, but they used him on a shoot later for when he did the last line in the ad. The Money Supermarket ad.
Oh, okay.
And he stole the HD TV from the caravan that he was in for the day.
That sounds about right.
I don't know if it was like when he was on your shoot, but yeah, that's...
He showed up 5 hours late.
Okay.
So we were all like, how are we going to get this? Showed up 5 hours late, went into his trailer, played video games and smoked pot with a few of his friends for probably another hour, which gave us maybe 2 hours to shoot. But then he came out and he just absolutely nailed it every time. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, brilliant.
This is why you do what you do, and fantastic. Who are we to judge?
I think also what's interesting about the gold spot stuff, it's a kind of slight beef of mine, is that most ads in advertising pretend to be funny but don't actually make you laugh.
Right.
It's like a sort of advertising sense of humour that isn't funny, whereas they were funny at the time. I don't know how do you know what I mean? You know when everybody laughs at the ads when you show the client, but it's like a pretense. It's just the structure is supposed to be a joke,
right?
But they don't actually make you laugh,
right?
Whereas they almost weren't like ads; they were genuinely funny.
Oh, that's good.
Ads.
Well, thanks. Yeah, no, I guess it's well. The interesting thing is I never set out to make people laugh at anything that I do, and I try and actively discourage other people to go for things that are aggressively funny or trying to make people laugh.
Yeah.
I love funny advertising. I don't think what I do is funny advertising.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Really?
I always strive for wit over kind of expressions of humor. I think when you try and make people laugh, you open yourselves up to failing. But if you try and make people smile and think at the same time, and you happen to get a laugh off the back end of it, then you're in a better place. I prefer.
I'm going to hold up some exhibits a bit later because I think they're funny. I'll get to those in a minute.
No, I appreciate that. But there's so many. This is an old thing that I used to say, which now I don't say anymore. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it was comedy dates, wit endures.
Who says that? Is that?
No, that was the thing that I used to say.
Oh, you used to say that. I thought you were going to say that.
When my creatives would try
Oscar Wilde.
They would write things and try and go for easy laughs, and I was like, just be smart.
Yeah.
Be smart, and if you happen to be funny off the back of that, then hooray. But You laugh at a comedy ad once, but if it's clever, then you'll take that with you and enjoy it 10 years from now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's funny when you describe, if you just go for a laugh and you don't deliver it, it makes it sound like you're not very bullish. And I found a quote from you at your time at Mother that says, there's a few quotes of yours I found. And
from
I don't
Mother? From Mother time?
Well, it's talking about
Mother.
It's talking about when you're at Mother. And I've got some quotes at the back end of this that I don't normally bring anyone's quotes in, but they seem quite honest. Generally, people are trying to look cool, so they don't say how they feel.
Right.
So your quote says, and I don't know if this is from that terrible article that misinformed me last time, but it says, at Mother, I didn't have the title of creative director, but I was probably behaving like one. I was very vocal, probably too vocal for Mother.
Yeah.
So what were you doing that was being like a creative director and being very vocal?
Oh,
a couple of years in.
I think that's true of how I've been throughout my entire career, and it's just
But that sounds. I suppose why I say that now is that sounds like very confident in your own opinion, rather than before it sounded like you weren't sure. Should we try and make them laugh? Should we not?
But it was blind confidence. It was stupidity. But at the same time, if you believe in something, then you just kind of. It's why I don't think it's why I was never fired. Is because they're like, oh, he's trying really hard. He believes in himself. God bless him. We'll try and let him down.
So what? You're intense and
focused and a lot of energy.
Gets you through a lot.
I mean, some of the shit that I tried to sell at TBWA was insane, and it was always kind of like, oh, there's Kolbusz trying to sell something crazy to us again. But I think it was for Nokia. I tried to sell it was a campaign about this phone that had over 80 features or something like that, and I kept pushing on one particular campaign. It was an animated campaigin about a pimp named LaChance. I'm reminded
clients love
constantly.
Ads with pimps.
It's like, but as
Who doesn't want that
as like this
stand out?
20-something like young, I was like, why do you not see how this is the answer to all of your problems? And the creative director team on it were just like, God love you for it, but stop. And I just kept pushing because I thought it was right, even though it wasn't.
It's not like pimps don't exist. They're in the real world. We want to reflect the real world.
Yeah. There was a joke about switchblades versus switch combs. It was I'm constantly I'm still reminded by these guys about the shit that I tried to pull.
So why leave Mother? It sounds like it was going well. You were making lots of work. You started winning lots of awards.
Well, I mean, I wanted to creative direct, and I think probably Mother at that time was different than Mother is now. I think it was harder to get that title and have that degree of autonomy. I think there was. I don't know. At the time, it was a struggle to truly feel like you had ownership of things. This was back years ago. I can't speak with any degree of authority about how it was since or is now. But yeah, just at the time, it never felt like I was ever going to be able to. At the time, I was probably a bit of a control freak, and I think I wanted more control. And Mother wasn't able to give it to me at that time. And, to a degree, I've been
there a long time, 5 years.
I'd been there a long time, and I think I'd gotten over this divorce and another breakup in the wake of that, and I think I just wanted to go back to America where I thought things felt a little bit more positive. I kind of, one of the things.
You went to San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, another one of those. That's another one of those situations where you're kind of like, I can't believe the me back then did that, because I wouldn't have had the courage to do that now.
So how did you do it? How did you go about being at Mother, and then all of a sudden you're in Goodby Silverstein in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Did you approach them? They approach you?
No, they approached me. They'd won a ton of business, and like. They'd won Sprint and Hyundai, and it was just their billings grew by I think they were up to like $1 billion or something. It was just nuts.
$1 billion.
Yeah, and they just needed creative, so they just kind of did. There was a period where they just went around the globe and just grabbed all the best.
Was that when Jerry Graff was there?
No, it was post Jerry. Oh. I think he'd gone to BBDO at that point, but they just went grabbing anyone they could around the globe, and I was one of those people.
Who interviewed you? Was that?
So
Jamie Barrett would be there?
No, Jamie and I did. I mean, I'm fond of Jamie. He and I never worked that much together when I was over there. because I was paired with Margaret Johnson, who was already.
Wyndham, is she?
No, she's been Goodby for 20 years or something like that.
Okay.
But I was paired with her, and she was quite a senior creative director there at the time, and I was a more junior creative director. But we worked well together, and so we were kind of left alone. So we worked into Jeff and Rich mostly. It was a bit of it was a period where we worked into Steve Simpson on HP, but yeah, no, it was mostly Margaret and I doing our own thing.
And what was the most surprising thing about turning up in Goodby's? Was it as you thought it would be, or?
Yeah, I mean, the agency was brilliant, and I went over there and I flew in on a Friday and accepted a job on the Friday, and by the Sunday I was kind of like, oh God, San Francisco's small.
It's great, San Francisco.
I mean, I love it as a city, but it felt like for the amount of stuff that I like to do and see, it just didn't feel like it would. It didn't feel like it gave me enough, which is why I had to leave. But the agency and the people there were amazing.
So was that at the period when I remember there was at one point? I think it must have been when you were there. They decided we're all in with digital. I can't remember how they phrased it, but it was a big hard line with we're not this anymore. It was all about content. I can't remember how did they phrase that? They had a good way of saying it. They were content. All of a sudden they were a content agency or something, but they made a very
that's about right
distinct line.
Yeah. They were very kind of
So was that when you were there or before you were there?
It was just as I was arriving. They were doing that thing where it was like
did that affect?
There are no barriers between.
Yeah. What did that affect your days very much? In terms of, did you have a was it different from Mother in terms of what you would do in the day, or not really?
Not really.
It's just different channels.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were dedicated practitioners of the digital arts. There were people who were brought in specifically for that, and there were accounts that digital played a greater role. I think Sprint was a big one. There were a handful of accounts where it was pretty digital heavy. I cut my teeth on digital a little bit there, but it wasn't the bulk.
Did you do much of it before then?
We did a handful of things with
Orange.
Orange with the Poke folks, but nothing of major significance. The Orange Paper Film Festival was the thing that we did that actually did quite well, digitally at Mother at the time. But yeah, it wasn't a focus.
So you did another one of your funny ads there, which was let's have a look. So you did the Kevin Bacon ad.
Yeah. Logitech.
How is that not a funny ad?
I'm not saying it's not funny. I mean, it's
not a observation into someone's soul that happens to be. That's just a funny ad, isn't it? It's quite a dark ad when you think about it. I suppose it is. I suppose there's a darkness to it.
Yeah.
Sadness.
Yeah, exactly.
It is sad.
I always strive for
once
a
you
little
start
bit of
laughing.
sadness.
Yeah, if you can wring out someone's soul.
Yeah.
And then he did a Denny's Super Bowl ad as well.
Yeah.
What other stuff did you work on when you were out there?
So I was on HP for several months when I first got there, and we didn't make a whole ton. And then Margaret went on maternity leave, and I did the Denny's pitch, which we won, which was good. And so we made some Denny's work, the Mobsters and the Cowboys work, and the Nannerpuss, which was a big success. And then Margaret and I think the thing that I'll always say is that because of my training at Mother, the fact that I was good client-facing and Margaret was great client-facing, I think we got put on a lot of the
problem
accounts because Jeff and Rich didn't have to worry about it. It was just like those two will get on with it. So it wasn't the most illustrious period. We tried to carve out little opportunities for ourselves, but so
you made them a lot of money rather than making you
I think so
self-award.
Yeah. Or we treaded water with some clients who were paying a lot of money, it's like the two things you mentioned are probably the two things that I'm most proud of. There were a couple of other things. We did some small good work for Specialized, the bicycle company, but for 3 years I probably would have preferred to have made more. But I love the relationships that I built there, and I'm still in communication with a lot of those people. And Margaret's still a dear friend, and Leslie Barrett, she's now like one of the higher ups there as well too. lots of good people, and Jeff and Rich are still great. And,
So San Francisco eventually felt too small.
I mean, it always felt too small. I think not because it is too small, just because I, as someone who consumes as much
Culture.
arts and culture as I do. I like to be able to I like it on tap, and lots of it, constantly. I like to know it's there. And San Francisco, although a very cultural and artistic city, not the same volume as a Manhattan or well, now New York, I suppose, not just Manhattan, New York or a London. So yeah, I mean, there's only so many times in a month you can go to the De Young Museum or the SF MoMA, or the handful of commercial galleries that are there before you start to kind of go, I've seen all this, I need something else. It's still a great city, though.
Yeah, I love San Francisco.
No, it's brilliant.
So then you come back to London.
Yeah.
Why London?
I looked at a handful of cities, New York, Los Angeles, and London, I think, were the three main ones. And there was a degree of familiarity with London. I liked the vibe there, the spirit of community that bleeds through the artistic. My brain derailed that sentence. Within London, there is an artistic community there's a spirit of community within the.
So we're gonna have a few goes at this.
It's a mess. It's okay. No, the thing that I love about London is how people consume the arts, and they do so as a collective. There's not.
It's not an elite thing.
It's very public, and everyone kind of sees the same things. And a lot of the galleries are free. The major galleries are free, and it's part of the cultural conversation. It's part of how society works, and there's something very attractive about that. I mean, it's funny. Some people will argue that London is a financial center. I'm like, okay, that's part of it, but it's kind of shoved off to the side. Still, there's a lot going on in London that's about how you live in the city and how you experience kind of everything around you. That's what I love about London. It's very alive. It feels very when you're in it, and you feel very connected to it.
More so than New York.
New York is wonderful as well too. New York always felt like more driven by commerce, and artistically you're served up all of these different experiences, and you don't necessarily share them with other people. You kind of experience them in isolation, and then kind of it's the weirdest thing. It's like you'll have a conversation with someone who you consider a peer, and you'll be like, did you see this thing? And they'll be like, no. But did you see this thing? And they'll be like, no. But did you see this thing? And they'll be like, well, no, I meant to go see that, but I didn't get around to it. But did you see this thing? It's almost like too much. Right. And as a consequence, you don't have, there aren't a lot of shared experiences. And part of the nice things, I mean, it's like when you go see a movie or a piece of theater, or you go to a gallery with someone, what do you do afterwards?
Sharing, it's one of the biggest parts.
It feels weird to just go home straight. No one goes home straight after a movie or a piece of theater or a concert. You go out and you have a drink, and you talk about what you've just seen. And I think that's an important part of arts and culture is I mean, we're all critics, right? We all kind of consume the thing, and then it becomes more significant in our minds based on the conversations we have with people about it in the wake of it. So I think that London fosters that within me.
Yeah,
definitely.
Interesting. And did Nick take you on at BBH?
He did.
He did. Had you met Nick before? Did you know Nick?
No. I hadn't met him before. Of course, I'd heard of him, and I was interviewing at a couple of places over here, and just connected with Nick in a very positive way. And it kind of, I think one of the things that I was also looking for, having been at two places where the founders were still heavily involved in the business. Bob and Mark at Mother, and Jeff and Rich at Goodby. I think I wanted to go to a place where I felt like I could, just a little more autonomy. Yeah, felt necessary at that stage.
Had John taken a slightly step back role then.
Yeah. I mean, he was still very much a presence in the building, but
not quite as on top of it.
No. Well, I wouldn't say not on top of it. It's just
let's rephrase that.
Yeah, let's rephrase that. He wasn't as
involved in as much
involved in the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
And Nick was very good about empowering the CDs underneath him, and just kind of let them run and just.
So at that point, were you hiring? Did you get a chance to hire?
I don't think I hired people until I'd proven myself a bit. I think it took
at BBH.
BBH, yeah. I think it probably took about a year before I was able to start going with this placement team. Let's get them on board.
And what would you look for when you hired?
People who are really strategically minded, and that's kind of always been anyone can. You can. I mean.
And do you think that's something you find through talking to them or seeing their book, or I guess both? Talking,
but then also, I mean, you can always tell, even just in one review, people who kind of get strategy. Strategy just plays a disproportionately important role in the creative process for me. And people who are really kind of get how to take in a brief and kind of break it down and do something really interesting with it. Those are the ones who kind of,
So at BBH you did the Guardian Pigs ad, right? So I've heard from a number of people a similar story related to that, which is that you had a script that barely anyone liked. Lots of people said, for Christ's sake, don't make that. But
myself included.
Somehow, it's been described as sheer force of personality or determination, you turn this thing that nobody wanted and they feared it because they thought this could be awful into something that won Grand Prix, and I think was it Ad Age's Ad of the Year?
Maybe Ad Week.
Ad Week, was it?
Yeah.
So what happened there? Is that right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's kind of accurate. I mean, it wasn't just me. There was a huge team of people involved, but yeah, there was definitely we knew it was the right ad very, very early on, and it took a lot of.
Well, what was it that people worried about in the beginning?
Well, on paper,
on paper it's an odd script.
On paper, it's an odd script,
and it's the Guardian, which is obviously super intelligent, liberal, whatever. And then you've got Three Little Pigs, which is a sort of unusual start.
Yeah.
And then you, rather than animate them, you shoot them, which brings its own issues. There's a whole sea of issues that obviously people were warning you against. So how did you feel confident enough to... It sounds like, and I'm not saying it was just you, but we've had a lot of self-belief and saw something in it that other people didn't see.
Well, it's that thing. I mean, and we all experience it. But when you see that, when you hear the right thing, or a team brings you a script that's the right thing, and it just feels that it's appropriate for the brief, and it feels inspiring and good and creatively rich. If it's right, the reason you pick it, the reason you push it forward, is because it kind of enters your mind fully formed. Like, you can see right? That's the thing, is like you see the thing in your head, you see the finished product in your head, and then the creative process is realizing that thing that's in your head, making that thing.
I remember reading something Woody Allen said, which is, he said his films are best when he first writes them and then they're in his head, and then from then on it's just a disappointing journey of never achieving as good as he imagined it. So obviously you had something that you could see in your head that other people just couldn't see.
Well, for me, it's the opposite. It's like the entire creative process is playing catch up, trying to get to the thing in your head, trying to make that thing real. And I mean, if you succeed, then you kind of end up pretty happy because you get it kind of close to the thing that you initially had imagined. But sometimes it falls a little short. Sometimes an external influence can make it better. But yeah, that was one of the ones that was pretty close to the thing.
So kind of belief, really, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's like it's that.
And was the client with you all the way on that journey, or was that tough?
I think they were always appreciative of my enthusiasm, and
Sounds very carefully worded.
Yeah. No. But they were. It was genuine. Like there's a reason we walked into that final presentation with the editor-in-chief with that script in our back pocket, because they were kind of like, okay, you genuinely believe in this thing. There's clearly something there. Perhaps I think there was a feeling that it maybe wasn't serious enough for the Guardian, and that was probably the reason for some of the reticence. But in the end, when the first script, which wasn't quite as good, bombed, there was an eager willingness to give the second one its day in court. So, and to his credit, Alan Rusbridger loved the pigs. Yeah.
Was he the client on this?
I mean,
did it even go to him to approve it in the first place?
So there was David Pemsel and Richard Furness, who were the two clients, and they both loved the script the whole time, but of course they were wary of the fact that it was a story about the three little pigs, and so we played it a little safe in the initial stages, but they were always very supportive of it, and they're still there. They're both still there at the Guardian. David's the CEO now, and Richard's high up in the ranks as well too. So it clearly worked out for both of them as well.
So did you, talking of John, Sir John, as we've got to call him now, did you work with him? Or did you overlap in anything?
I'm trying to think. No, we were always very friendly. But I don't think we ever worked on anything together. No.
So I think you were there, 3 years?
Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 3.5.
Was it 3.5?
It's November 2010 to March 2014. So right. I'm not good at maths. So
3.5 sounds about right.
Yeah, 3.5. Right.
So what did you take away from having been at BBH? Because they're known for having a very particular way of doing things.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that experience?
That the image that they projected of themselves was way out of whack with the reality.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think they've people will always believe that they have a particular way of doing things. The nickname's GBH, I think.
GBH, because it's tough.
Grievous bodily harm. Yeah. But I think that it's a very warm culture, a lot more than had been perceived, and they kind of let people. If you were good, and you were able to contribute to the well-being of the agency, then they would just let you run with whatever it was that you were doing. It was never you have to do it this way. It was what's going to work, what's going to service our clients and generate fame for the agency. A lot more relaxed
than you imagined them to be.
Than I imagined. I initially went in there thinking that I'd probably get fired really quickly, because I always thought I was a lot messier than BBH.
I heard a really good thing. I've got to try and remember it now, but I heard a great thing that Nigel Bogle used to say to newcomers. I think and it was something like, you're probably imagining what we want from you, and you're probably questioning whether you can do it to the standard that we expect. Whereas we've hired you for what you're good at, and you add to us, not the other way around.
That's
so
wonderful.
You do, which is amazing, isn't it?
Oh, he's the best.
Yeah, I've heard amazing things about him.
He's amazing.
Which surprised me, which I would have thought, because other people I've heard phrases like, what's that phrase? Something like grim excellence, or something that implies soulless excellence, or something like that people who've worked there have said it's like a machine that gets to excellence, but it's very tough.
Yeah.
GBA, it's another way of GBH. But I would love that little opening speech that he would give newcomers to make them feel good and to do what they...
No, that's lovely. And completely in line with what you would expect of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was never... I mean, I worked hard there, probably harder than anywhere I've ever worked. But I think I brought a lot of that upon myself. So it's fine. It was a wonderful experience.
So you go back to New York, flitting backwards and forwards from across the pond to Wired and Kennedy, ECD. Sounds great. Wired and Kennedy, New York, ECD.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, I'd spoken to them a number of times. They tried to get me out to Portland a couple of times. Actually, I back when I was talking about leaving Goodby, I talked about Los Angeles, New York, or London, but actually Portland was in the mix there as well too. I had interviewed to run Target at Wyden Kennedy, Portland, and I think they were taking longer than I wanted, and I mean they notoriously do. They take a long time to hire. They like to be sure of people, and I couldn't wait, and I got along so well with Nick, and London was calling, so I did that. But so I'd been speaking to them over the years, and they'd talked to me a little bit while I was at BBH as well about coming back to Portland and doing something, but it just never took. And then eventually Scott and Ian left their posts at Wyden, New York, and they were looking for someone there, and it was one of those things where they were looking around. I'd been speaking to Melanie Myers, their global head of recruitment, just on a friendly basis. I think we'd met up. We were at Art Basel in Miami, and we were just talking about what was going on there. And I was like, yeah, it's something that I entertain doing. And then eventually we kept talking, and it just kind of happened. It was the right job in the right place at the right time. It felt like it was a good move. Felt like I needed to move out of the deputy executive creative directorship and try and run the thing.
Sounds like a place to be for another 5 years or so.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing they don't tell you about Wyden, and I mean, the place is absolutely brilliant, but it's very difficult to come in at the top, having never worked at Wyden, and not knowing. So Wyden has such a strong culture. Have you ever worked at Wyden? I don't think you know. It's such a strong culture. And if you don't know, you can't be taught, and you can't be taught quickly, and especially if you're coming in at the top and there's all these other people who've experienced Wyden, it's a tough thing to reckon with. And I did it. I did okay there. I had a year and a half there, and I'm very proud of the work that I did, and I'm still very friendly with a lot of the people that I worked with. But
so, what elements of the culture are so different and difficult to assimilate quickly? What kind of thing?
Gosh,
is it because they're from?
There's a way of doing things. It's called the Wyden way, and there's a
in terms of process or thinking,
completely
or everything,
absolutely everything, soup to nuts. It's not written down anywhere, but there's a manual of how to perform, think, create, operate at Wyden, and it's not a bad thing. It's worked enormously well for them, but there's history there, and if you don't know that history and you don't know how to graft onto that body, then it gets a little bit weird. And I think it was just one of those situations where I was just like, I felt like I was trying too hard to make the place my own, and whereas I think what they wanted was for me to steer a ship that was already headed on a particular path. And I think in the end it was like a great place, but it just didn't feel like the right fit for me.
So it sounds like the exact opposite of the speech I just said that Bogle gave.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no.
So we have a way. Mm-hmm. You need to learn it, and
it's a good way. I mean, they're a brilliant agency. There are many brilliant agencies around the globe, and God bless them. But they just it wasn't the right thing for me at the time. Yeah.
So you come back again, third time,
and I love London.
Yeah,
it feels. I really do. It's one of those things where you think you're ping-ponging back and forth, and it's just convenience, or you're a victim of circumstance or whatever, but I do love this city, and it does feel like home. And yeah, it's really, really comforting to be here, but not it's not like comforting, like complacent. It's very cozy. It's I feel good. I feel right here.
And interestingly, what I've read when you've talked about Droga 5, that also sounds very different to when you're talking about Wyden's, which is that you've got the latitude to shape the office a little bit more to you, rather than assimilate to whatever New York's like or some of the other offices.
And please, that's not me saying that I'm like some sort of a control freak, because I think I've tried to drop most of those tendencies. I just one of the things that I like is allowing people to be able to be who they are and let their creative voices kind of. I mean, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? When you've run places yourself. For me, the most gratifying thing is when people feel like they have the freedom to be themselves, but at the same time, kind of appreciate your curatorial eye and kind of do things, make work that they themselves feel comfortable with, but also to gain your approval. If that makes sense. And then you've kind of got an amalgam of two.
Absolutely.
That's the interesting thing, is when you take someone who's steering a ship creatively and fitting them with someone who has a very distinct creative voice, and seeing what those two things together can realize.
Well, I think that's one of the challenges, is how if people don't feel safe, they close up like a crab, and they don't offer up all that they can, because they think this is not what this company wants, or this is, because lots of things, it's an odd business. You're trying to do things that, in theory, that haven't been done, and can make people anxious, because you think, maybe there's a great reason why this hasn't been done, because it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So to try and create an environment where people are confident enough to throw things out there that they're unsure of is unusual. There's not many environments like that. I don't think.
No, it's. I think it's good. I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a safe space, and it's not all going to be right, everything that everyone says. But if you can give people the license to be themselves, then maybe you'll get a more interesting creative product, I guess, is the working theory.
One of the things, looking through the work that you've been doing, that I've noticed, is that I can see what you're doing in a good way. Okay. So I like the fact that the Hobbs work is totally different from the work for the burger, which I'm trying, Rustlers. And that's very different from Uniqlo. They've got, I'm saying this like it's some revelation, but they've got very clear, I can see what they represent. And it's something that probably I wouldn't mention a while ago, because that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. But whereas I think a lot of people now are just throwing out content, for want of a better word, with a badge at the end. Right. But there's no plan. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. I can see what you're trying to set Hobbs up for. Yeah. Or Rustlers, or they've got personalities and strategies, it seems. Of course. And that's quite unusual now. And it was interesting when earlier you were saying that what you look for with creatives, and I think it's also quite unusual to look for someone who understands strategy. Yeah. To understand what the plan is for the brand. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think we try and make work that is true to any brand. We're very collaborative with our clients as well too. The thing that I hate the most is making work that clients feel like they're being sold, rather than if you have a client that's complicit in the buying and the creation and the execution of the thing, then they'll be proud of the artifact when it's finished. And I think the best way to go about doing that is to really listen, and it's whose thing is truth well told. That's McCann's, I think. Is that McCann's? Yeah, ironically. I'm not gonna borrow that or anything like that. McCann's doing well at it. Rob and Molly are doing a great job over there. Yeah. It's you should try and find the thing that's true about any brand, and then kind of turn that into the most entertaining expression of that thought or that feeling or that purpose possible. So it's interesting, because particularly when I talk to people who've been in the business 2 to 3 years, Droga 5 in any location is probably their top agency. Right. But the way you describe it, that sounds old-fashioned. And I'm not saying old-fashioned is bad. No. I'm saying that's traditional. Well, the tenets are old-fashioned. The tenets are old-fashioned. And there's nothing wrong with that. It goes back to when you were at college before, entertain. Of course. Surprise, engage, and reward. But lots of people have moved away from that kind of thinking. No, of course, because there's always a new answer, isn't there? Yeah. There's always something that you got to chase. There's some sort of product that you have to sell your clients. So how do you avoid doing that? Because I think when you're describing, if you can collaborate with the client and come up with something together, at each end of that, lots of people are saying to the client, what do you want? We'll do it now. We'll do it in 20 minutes. You don't have to go and have a coffee. We'll be done when you get back. Right. And at the other end, you've got almost just as destructive, saying you don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
This is the answer. Obviously, you're a client, you don't know. So you've got those at the either end, and then in the middle is the sweet spot of trying to do it together.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
Well, there's a litmus test, isn't it, for any client that you work with, and you want to make something good. And
How do you define good?
well, good. There's an empirical truth to quality work. There's oh gosh, how do you define good? It's quality work that advances a client's needs, is true to the brand, and stands for something greater. The whole brand purpose thing is well-trod territory in this day and age, but Droga was one of the people who pioneered that. And purpose is not about doing something altruistic or something good in the world. Purpose is about your brand stands for something, it means something, and it can be, we're going to make the best cheese possible. That can be your brand purpose. So off the top of my head, it's a lousy brand purpose, but as long as whatever you do works,
it doesn't have to be good for the world. It can be
Yeah, I think that a lot of people confuse that, which is why I clarify.
Yeah.
As long as your work and the work that you do as a brand is purpose driven, then if the rest of the ingredients are in place, then it can't fail. It's that horrible expression. We have a hackneyed ad expression jar in our office that you have to drop a coin in every time you say. I was about to use the term North Star, which would have
is that banned?
Yeah, North Star is banned. Brand onion, that's another one.
Yeah.
Snackable content.
Yeah.
Oh, snackable content, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's kind of you to say. I appreciate.
Well, I think it's just
picking out that.
I think it's funny. It almost was. I think I spoke to Jerry Graff as well, and I think his agency's work is similar in the sense that it feels like it's single-mindedly trying to achieve something and set up what a brand personality is, rather than create some crazy stuff. So is it what I found really interesting talking to Jerry, is there'll be lots of people who get into the business who think we want to do some cool, fun Skittles ads. So they'll come up with a load of crazy nonsense.
But it's
that
not
might
rooted
not
in
be
anything.
funny. It's not rooted in anything.
Yeah.
And then when he broke down why the Skittles was like the Skittles, it was all strategy. It wasn't like, let's do some cool stuff on budget Skittles. It was, he talked through it like a strategy guy. But I don't know. It's obviously it's an unusual time, I think, in the business where people are adapting to a complicated landscape.
Sure.
And I think few people are brave enough to lay out, this is how it works, this is what we want to do, and this is what we achieve. So I was just struck by the different flavours of tone across the work.
Well, it's definitely based on the individual clients. We don't want to have a house style, because that means that we're serving ourselves rather than the people that are paying us.
So here's another rumour I've heard about you. So, and I can't remember who told me this, so you can say that's definitely.
So this isn't a rumor that's born of journalism. This is
just
this is
idle chit chat amongst ad types. That you've been known to say to clients, just no, it's not happening. It's not why I come to work. Essentially, being very, very clear what you want and don't want.
Right. Never in a disrespectful manner, though.
I'm not saying it's disrespectful. I suppose my point is not that it's disrespectful, and I might be categorising it as sounding like arrogance, but just not accepting. Few people at the moment, I think, fight for what they truly believe in. There's a lot of pressure, financial particularly, to do what's being asked, and you push back on that a lot. What I've heard is you can push back on that a lot and have a debate. I don't know whether that's true. You can say no, that's not true. But if I bring up Exhibit A from Mother, going around being like a creative director and having belief in what you said about pigs, and essentially having belief in believing in something and standing up for it.
I think I'm very pragmatic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I definitely work with people who have similar ambitions, which is to put beautiful things out into the world on behalf of brands. And I believe that there's a lot of brands, products, services who don't prize filling the world with wonderful things. But I think what we do is so imposing. I mean, the line that I will always trot out, and I said it off the cuff once, and now it's become a thing that I do trot out. But I mean, what we do is invades people's homes, and it's a blight on their landscapes, and it's incumbent upon us. We have a moral obligation to make those things as joyous and entertaining as possible. And it doesn't mean that we're standardizing. There's a standardized approach to the communication that I help people make, but it definitely needs to be in pursuit of the betterment of humanity, not in an altruistic sense, but absolutely. I mean, art can be a force for good, just in and of itself, and I think that's what we should be contributing towards, the betterment of society in some capacity. Sounds.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, it's like a salesman. If a salesman comes in who's rude, brash, scruffy, and boorish, you might not listen to him. But if they're
why put a shitty poster in the world? Why put it's so arrogant. If you're a brand and you put up it's so arrogant to put up shit that doesn't I'm being sloppy in my language right now, but I mean, think about all the shit that's that's out there, and as a brand to go, I bought this space, and I'm gonna tell people what I stand for and what I think, and this is what they should buy and why they should do it, without any nuance or subtlety, or any respect for the person whose eyes they're infecting. Yeah, it just seems kind of crazy.
Well, it also shows no understanding of how people react to media.
Exactly.
Because I often start most meetings say, have you seen any ads this morning or last night? Oh. And virtually everybody says, God, I can't think of any, no. Yeah. You just can't retain them because it's just, it's just stuff crassly trying to get their attention, and there's a lot of interest in other things to do. Why would you bother? Whereas if you make something that's attractive, it might attract people. But it's not a popular philosophy, that one.
Is it not?
No. Well, just look around you.
Yeah, I suppose.
So here's a weird question. What's the worst ad you've ever done? Why? And what did you learn from it?
That is a weird question.
Because I guess most people I talk to, they learn more from their mistakes and the things that go wrong than the things that go right.
I mean, I've had varying degrees of success over the years. I don't think I've
had a terrible thing.
I mean, I don't think anything's been so profoundly awful that I don't know. I mean, you kind of know when something's bad and you try and make it better. So if by the end of the process you haven't kind of...
perhaps if the bar's that, maybe what's the most average thing you've done? What did you learn from that?
I've probably done a lot of average things, but I've also gone to great lengths to bury them. It's probably a lot of the early stuff that I did. Yeah. The stuff, I mean, there was probably a lot of stuff that I did when I was at TVWA that was willfully wacky. Yeah. Where I was trying to do something that was kind of crazy and not necessarily rooted in any sort of strategy. But that stuff kind of drifts off in the ether like a bad smell.
So I've got a quick fire quote round, and as I say, I don't normally read people's quotes back to them but yours seem quite honest.
Okay.
So
that's good.
And some of them I thought I would ask you to explain. So I'm very insecure, but also have a demanding ego.
Right.
How does that make you? How does that work, and what does that lead to?
I think it's probably true of most creative people, though, isn't it? It's delusions of grandeur cut with crippling insecurity is how I describe it.
Probably two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
Yeah.
If you're not insecure, you probably don't drive on to do something good.
I think so, right? And I mean, it's like no one knows that they're great, and at any point you could stop being great. That's the thing, isn't it? That's like every great artist stops being a great artist. I'm not calling myself a great artist. I'm just saying anyone who's involved in the arts. But we were talking about David Bowie even before this conversation started, but he had a terrible period where he wasn't necessarily on point, and then got it back for that last Black Star album. God rest his soul. But I mean, creativity can drop out at any point, and you have to kind of stay a little bit humble.
Do you think the insecurity is part of doing something good? I suppose the insecurity is questioning yourself, isn't it? Not being sure.
Yeah, maybe, probably. I actively solicit people's opinions and just kind of use that to inform what I think is right. Hearing what a lot of different people think about something helps clarify my position on something, I think, as well too. But ultimately, a lot of it boils down to gut, and over the course of time, I think you just learn to trust your gut a little bit more. And if something feels wrong, and you've had a degree of success in the past, and going against your gut leads to things that you're unhappy with, then you just learn to trust the little voice that's screaming inside of you.
Okay. So the next one, I'm pretty sure no one else has said this who I've interviewed. The creative sector of our industry is turning into a clown show. Not the amusing clowns or the French ones who trade in beautiful physical realizations of the human form. I'm talking about the creepy clowns who kill children.
Right.
I think that's the first time someone's explained the business like that.
Right. God, I got to read that. Because I think the point of it is the first one. Yeah, the creative sector is turning into a clown show. Oh, yeah. Okay, I think that was probably something to do with the fact that people have stopped focusing on creativity, and they've started focusing on, everyone's pointed in the wrong direction, it feels. They're either busy writing think pieces, or they're trying to do good in the world, or they're chasing the newest technology or fad rather than focusing on the task at hand, which is making brilliant individual pieces of creative work based on what a client's...
rather than focusing on the now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, that's what John Hegarty, I remember, I used to see him with my book as a young kid. And I remember he once said, I'm sure he said it to other people, that people often ask me, where are we going, or will we open an office in Europe, or will we do this and will we do that? He said, I just concentrate on what's on my desk in the morning, and it might be a trade ad, and that may lead to us opening an office in Europe. I don't look...
Make that as interesting as possible.
Yeah, make that as good as you can, and that may lead somewhere.
But
don't have 5-year
Don't actively
plans.
try and do something different.
Yeah.
Try and do something original and interesting.
Do you think at the moment people think it's boring to look at what you may do now, whereas if you guess what might be happening next year or the year after, that seems more exciting? It's just too hard to actually sit
I wish it was. I wish it was that I think it's more insidious than that. I think they think it's not as lucrative to focus on
the work in front of them.
On the work in front of them. Hilariously,
it's better to guess at what might be and try and sell it.
Yeah, well, it has been for almost a decade now. So our entire industry has been running around with their heads cut off, trying to figure out what's next, because they kind of think that that's going to be the answer, but there is no answer. There's nothing's slowing down. The accelerated pace of modern living and the way that it's just nothing's.
So the only answer is to create something good, one thing that's good today.
Just great things today.
And see what happens next.
Yeah. See where that leads you. I mean, you can plan for the future and fine, but don't. I wouldn't obsess about it. Otherwise, you're not going to make great stuff now.
So the one last question I'm going to ask you is to, obviously that we've covered a few negatives, is to end on a positive. So what excites you about advertising going forward?
Wow. It's very general.
Almost ask you to be general.
It's a bit general.
Well, it doesn't have to be that big then. That sounds almost like I'm asking you to be one of those guys who were just slagging off.
No, but what excites me is what's in front of me.
Is tomorrow's brief.
Tomorrow's brief, absolutely. Yeah. It's as simple as that. I mean, as a creative individual, as someone who loves the challenge that clients set forth on a day-to-day basis, it's attacking that, and that's the kind of thing that pushes me forward. That's what motivates me. That's why I'm a terrible businessman, because I'm just focused on doing the best that I can with what I've got.
Excellent. That's positive.
Yeah, sure.
Great to talk to you. Thanks for coming in.
Dan, thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Sorry I didn't We didn't clock in at the 2-hour Tony Davidson mark, did we?
Well, you never know. Sometimes these things. Tony Davidson was 4 hours.
Tony Davidson was 4 hours?
Mark Reddy was 4 hours.
He can really talk. Tony Davidson can talk. Mark
Tony-
Reddy, I'm surprised about the 4
So
hours.
where are we? We're 29. We're just under 2.